play competitive Pokemon to play against real people and hone their skills in comparison to an NPC in-game. A real human will try their hardest to win, be able to predict and make smart choices. But recently, a bot was created that not only exceeded the NPCs in-game, but became a top player in Pokémon Showdown. This is about an AI named Foul Play, a bot that's probably better than you.
Foul Play is, and I quote, a singles-focused battle bot that only plays formats with species clause. However, July 5th was the first time in 6 years since PM Argilla posted about it, who I will be referring to as PM for the rest of the video because I don't know how to pronounce that. So how does this work? Well, on April 7 of 2019, at the time, PM described how the bot worked, as it evaluates the resulting states and makes decisions about what the best move is. And in an effort to emulate the way humans play, if there were multiple good plays, he would let the bot choose a different move, if faced with the same situation again. In order to not make it completely deterministic, these being some of the battles that bot played in 2019 that you are seeing now. In Gen 7, random battles where the bot is playing as the nice name nerd, the bot does immediately differentiate itself from the NPC that you play in the game. It does this by switching out, although it does make weird choices by sacking Galvantula. But we can see that the bot has a decent understanding of what these Pokemon's strong suits are, as he heals Lugia in order to keep multi-skill intact, even though it wasn't particularly low on HP. This is not a move that an NPC would make. Again, differentiating itself from the bots in the game. And since Suicune is trying to set up instead of attack, it attempts to cripple it, and after seeing it can't break through, it uses Whirlwind, essentially neutering it. Now, to make a long story short, because I want to get to the new version of the bot, he does end up losing to his opponent, but we can already see via the decisions that he makes that the bot does have a decent understanding of competitive singles and makes human-like choices. So how does it work now in 2025, 6 years after? Well, Foul Play has its own battle engine that works similarly to the Monte Carlo tree search system. The Monte Carlo tree search is a search engine that is commonly used in board games for sequential decisions. So you can see how that's fitting for competitive Pokemon because that's literally what it is. It can essentially do what any human player does, predicting, etc. But most importantly, and I quote, it can infer what information is revealed throughout the battle. The reason why it's effective is because instead of exploring all the possibilities in the game, it explores those that will lead it to the most likely towards winning, which is what we do as humans when we play competitive Pokemon. It also uses a Pokemon battle engine that can search through Pokemon stats. It's worked by taking a Pokemon stats, moves, and generating a list of all possible outcomes. The past versions of this bot use Expect Minimax, which I may be mispronouncing. It's an artificial intelligence system used in two-player zero-sum games. A zero-sum game is basically just a situation where one person's gain is equivalent to another person's loss, which is competitive Pokemon, since the only way to tie in the singles is to reach turn 100, which practically never happens. So these two are both games' decision algorithm. What makes them different, and what would make the Monte Carlo tree search system better? The Monte Carlo tree system works by exploring different outcomes or branches, which much better describes what competitive singles is. Basically, the Monte Carlo tree search system will search the most promising possibilities for a depth of about 10 turns or more, and will search minimally the ones that aren't as promising. The Expect system would search every possibility for about 5 turns, which is inefficient, and would also have to deal with the time running out. Now, I mentioned the aspects of chance in competitive Pokemon, and how you have to consider that when choosing moves. The Monte Carlo tree system also takes that into account, and I quote, if a move has a 10% chance to miss, there will be 2 child nodes to choose from, a 90% node where the move hits, and a 10% node where the move misses. These nodes are selected based on their likelihood. Now, what about damage rolls? If you're using the damage calc extension, taking into consideration the damage rolls is one of the most important things. So how does the bot deal with this? Well, there is a bit of a problem with this, which is that there's a lot of possibilities to generate, and it's really hard to do that, but also inefficient. The solution is to simplify it. Basically, it will group the damage rolls. It takes into consideration the most important factor, which is, will this move cause the opposing Pokemon to faint? Basically, again, and I quote, the resultant instructions are grouped by whether they cause a feint. Each group's damage is averaged, and the likelihoods are summed. But as described by PM, Pokemon is a game of hidden information, and specifically in singles, it's not VGC, where you don't have the exact movesets, abilities, or items of the opposing Pokemon. You have to do a lot of deducting. When you're playing competitive Pokemon, this is one thing where you as a human are able to use your critical thinking skills. But how would a a bot do this? Well, for example, when their Pokemon takes damage or when they cause damage to their opponent, and I quote, simulates the damage rolls and gets a better idea of the opposing Pokemon stats. I'm no comp sci major, but I would assume this could be compared to the damage calc. When you start out the games, the damage rolls you see on the side of your screen will probably change once your opponent makes a move, as it now has new information. It can give you a more accurate guess on the opposing Pokemon's movesets, items, natures, and their damage rolls. It makes informed decision based on the information your Pokemon reveals, just like how a human would when you're playing against someone and your opponent has a slower Pokemon, based off comparing those speed stats of yours. And if it outspeeds your Pokemon and uses the same move multiple times in a row, that pretty much reveals that they're probably holding Scarf. And this is why I was comparing Foul Play to the damage calculator, because a very important aspect of its set is predictions. The way it does this is, and I quote again from PM, Foul Play keeps a large list of possibility sets for each opposing Pokemon and filters them down to the battle progression. Using the techniques mentioned above this, unless I misinterpreted it, it's about random battles where you don't get to choose your set, but in standard play, you do get to do this. So it gathers information by using the Smogon usage stat, their scrapped teams, and interestingly, public replays. So how well has this done? Well, pretty darn well actually, as it has reached top 100 spots. Now to end it, let's analyze one of the most recent replays, specifically of Generation 3 OU. In the first match, the bot starts out Metagross, a very common Gen 3 OU lead because it has a very high base attack stat and an explosion. Basically, it's a guaranteed OHKO of most Pokemon. His opponent, however, leads with Suicune, which is not a common lead, but it is good against Metagross because it can absorb Meteor Match and sometimes can live Explosion, especially if it has defensive investment. Depending though, I assume this is why Foul Play switched out. Snorlax is actually switched into the match. It's a bulky Pokemon who can usually absorb special attacks and set up via Curse. However, this did surprise me because Snorlax isn't a common Pokemon in Gen 3 OU, being a common target to fighting types or any physical attacks. This is why opponents switches into his Metagross. However, Snorlax is packing EQ, and that does significant damage. Salamence then switches in to get that attack drop on Snorlax. Snorlax then switches out for a Metagross after giving a quick back and forth between Suicune and Snorlax. Claydol is revealed, and Snorlax is honestly doing a lot of heavy lifting here, but gets taken out by Explosion. His Metagross takes out the opposing one, and he then uses Tyranitar, who takes damage from Jirachi, but sets up and does major damage to Salamence, and flinches as well. This is where the luck aspect that I talked about previously comes in, and he takes out the Suicune, plus does damage to Jirachi before going into Jolteon. And then the opponent also reveals a Snorlax. Very interestingly, Metagross then takes out Salamence that the opponent sacrifices. He then reveals Magneton, who is a bit rarer, but his main role is to trap opposing Skarmory. It gets taken out by Snorlax and Salamence finishes off the game. Accelerock T's rating, the AI, his ratings went up from 1585 to 1603, and his opposing opponent went from 1547 to 1529. And this was pretty highly ELO, as you can see. The bot did everything that was described from the predictions to adapting. It didn't just take type matchups into account, but the Pokemon's abilities and correctly switched in and out when it did not benefit them, much like a regular player. So what do we take away from this? Well, that's a good question. Here's the thing. There's two obvious things to state. This bot takes a lot of skill to make. You have to be knowledgeable individual to code something like this. I've only ever coded one thing, and it was in HTML, and the only reason I passed was because no one else actually submitted the assignment, and I literally just copy-pasted the codes from Google. So, impressive. But the thing is that it's unfair to go up against an AI that has resources that you just don't have. See, when you go up against an opponent, it's implied it's fair because you both have the same resources, a damage calc, and access to Smogon. But an AI will process this information at a rate that humans just cannot compare with. That does not mean that the AI isn't beatable, but it is unfair. Like I stated before, the bot explores the top most promising branches, and it does go faster than a human can, which is significant when your game is timed. And personally, I don't know how people who have lost to this AI feel, but if I had high ELO and I lost to an AI, I would be pissed, because the higher ELO you have, the more a match counts, and the more effort you put in, and you're not just losing ELO, you're also losing your placement on the ladder. People are okay losing to a human because it's implied it's fair. You have the same resources, you both are human, so you have the same ability to process information, and while one player may be better than the other, you're fine with that because you understand your opponent is just like you, taking time to hone their skill. It's a human that just wants to win like you, but that's not the case. That's what makes it fun, and that's what makes it a competitive game. That's not the case for AI. Sure, the team that was built took human effort, and the coding did as well, but the actual gameplay is not being done by a person per se. There's human input, but that's a robot doing it. It would be kind of disheartening to put in so much effort in just to lose to a bot. There's also the risk that someone at some point seeing this could use a bot in a tournament. I'm not implying at all that the person who coded this would ever do it for this reason. I think that it's pretty clear that it was a passion project, which I think is really cool. And right now, the possibility of this bot being used in a tournament or to cheat is really far off in the future. But this can be a possibility, especially when we have seen bots used to cheat in Pokemon in the past. For example, in the past, like in the Mazar scandal, there was a bot who was used to scout enemy teams. So this really isn't that far from a possibility. I'm trying to remain unbiased because I think the person who did this is skilled and had no negative intentions whatsoever. But also, I want to be realistic. I think anything, especially nowadays, that I have to do with AI needs to be viewed and discussed accurately and with an unbiased point of view, which I know is hard, but we gotta try. I am no comp-sci major, so please tell me if I got anything wrong and let me know what you think down in the comments below. Thank you.